Welcome to BCS TV, presented by the Armchair Jockeys. For this episode, we've travelled to the South Downs and arguably Britain's most beautiful racecourse, to gorgeous Goodwood. And it's the host of the next 3 races in the QIPCO British Champions Series, and heading our star cast is the best racehorse in the world, the incomparable Frankel. Coming up in the show, we turn to the clock to examine just how good Frankel was in that devastating performance at Royal Ascot. And Simon Crisford tells us whether Godolphin's burgeoning talent, Farhh, has the speed to worry Frankel in the QIPCO Sussex Stakes. We hear from Willie Mullins on whether dual Royal Ascot winner Simenon can shake up the staying hierarchy in the Artemis Goodwood Cup. And we find out whether John Gosden can make inroads on Aidan O'Brien's lead in this season's trainer rankings with his challenge in the Markel Insurance Nassau Stakes. So that's what's coming up in the show, but first let's settle in a new armchair jockey. Eddie Fremantle joins us. And Eddie, you're renowned for minutely walking the track prior to any race meeting that you attend. 1, what kind of advantage does it give you? And 2, what is the particular test that Goodwood provides for the racehorse?
I like to walk the course, Lydia, because it might give me an advantage. It doesn't necessarily give me an advantage, but sometimes you'll find a strip of ground that's favoured, and often at Goodwood, over a course of a 5-day meeting, things can change from one day to the other. The wind may be blowing from the west on one day, giving a big advantage for horses up with the pace because the wind's behind them in the long home straight, or it might be blowing in their faces from the east another day, giving an advantage to those horses waiting behind other runners and getting cover from the wind. The ground can vary from one day to the next as well. If you get rain, horses sometimes come across to the stand side on the round course, and sometimes the stands rail is advantage. Sometimes a strip of ground is worn down the middle of the course, and that becomes far faster as the meeting goes on. So over a 5-day meeting, such as glorious Goodwood, and there aren't many in the calendar, Royal Ascot being the one that most people will know, over the 5 days, things can change very dramatically. It's an idiosyncratic course, it's up and down, the turns are quite tight. You need a horse that's well balanced and handy, as well as one that's got some tactical speed to be able to make the mark on the race in the home straight.
Steve Mellish is also with us. Now Steve, Frankel and Tom Queally have both passed the Goodwood test because they won last year's QIPCO Sussex Stakes. What is it that we gain from Frankel running in this race again? And I suppose more importantly, what does Sir Henry Cecil and Prince Khalid Abdullah gain?
I'll answer that in reverse order, if I may. I think what Sir Henry Cecil gains is that it was always the plan. And I think, like a lot of good trainers, particularly with good horses, I think you work backwards. And I think at the beginning of the year, when they were planning on when to step Frankel up, their preferred option was always to go to the International at York for stepping up to 1.25 miles. If you think back to when he made his first run this year in the Lockinge, they had a bit of a setback beforehand. There were doubts whether he was going to run, and Henry Cecil was very keen on running him. I think it was just part of what he had organised, and he was going to try everything he could to get him there. And it was always going to be go to Newbury, go to Ascot, come to Goodwood, and then step the horse up in trip. So I think from his point of view, it's doing what he always had in plan. And you can see it working. You've only got to look at how it's worked this year, how the horse is gradually getting better with that spectacular performance last time at Ascot. All talk now about does the horse settle has gone. You know, so you've got to trust the top trainers with good horses to do it right. And I think that's what they gain. What do we gain? In truth, it probably won't be the most competitive race in the world, but we get another chance to see one of the great horses of our lifetime.
We'll be assessing that challenge in the QIPCO Sussex Stakes and also the 2 other races in the British Champions Series here at Goodwood shortly. But first, let's find out what sectional timing can tell us about Frankel's performance in the Queen Anne. What the eye tells you is not always substantiated by the clock. The story of how a race unfolds is vulnerable to misinterpretation without the evidence of sectional times. This tool for race analysis is used widely around the world, but it was only adopted more consistently of late in this country by the QIPCO British Champions Series. A transmitter carried in each horse's saddlecloth feeds back, in real time, information about a horse's position many times per furlong. This technology, provided by turf tracks, enables us to deduce the time each horse takes between certain specified points in a race. This data can uncover star quality or help us measure it. So what more exemplary example than Frankel, the world's best racehorse? He produced a career best performance at Royal Ascot. How brilliant was he? Let us count the ways. It took Frankel 97.85 seconds to run the 1 mile trip of the Queen Anne. His sectional times were recorded by Turf Tracks for each furlong that he ran. The right-hand column shows how this same overall time would be produced by a horse distributing its energy in a theoretically optimal way. The disparity illustrates Frankel's still untapped ability. Quite simply, these figures suggest he's capable of an even faster overall time. According to Turf Tracks, Frankel was lagging behind par for the first 4 furlongs, reaching halfway in 1.1 seconds slower than you would expect given his overall race time. From there, he accelerated remarkably to go 0.49 seconds below par by 3 furlongs out, then 0.8 seconds above par by 2 furlongs out, and 1.63 seconds above par by the furlong marker. He then appeared to slow down markedly in the final furlong. This cumulative time of 32.88 seconds from halfway to 1 furlong out on Ascot's upwardly inclined track and on ground no firmer than good seems extraordinary. It is roughly equivalent to 31.8 seconds on a dead flat track. That kind of speed would result in an overall time over 5 furlongs from a standing start of 56 seconds or even slightly under. To put this into context, De Jure, recognised as one of the world's supreme sprinters, won the 1990 Nunthorpe over 5 furlongs on a flat track on good to firm ground in 56.16 seconds. Turf Tracks clocked Frankel's fastest individual furlong in the Queen Anne at 10.58 seconds, which translates to 42.53 miles per hour. It suggests he would be capable of almost 44 miles an hour on a dead flat track. Little Bridge, winner of the King's Stand Stakes over 5 furlongs, which was staged within 35 minutes of the Queen Anne, recorded a fastest sectional of 10.78 seconds. And Black Caviar, who took the 6th furlong Diamond Jubilee Stakes, recorded 10.84 seconds. Behind Frankel in the Queen Anne, the runner-up Acceleration sectionals show he tried to live with the winner's 3 furlong burst, but was broken by the effort even before staggering the final furlong in 14.7 seconds. This breakdown shows he was the second best horse on the day by a far greater margin than that by which he beat third-placed Side Glance. So there's the evidence from Turf Tracks. Frankel destroyed a field of high-class milers by unleashing outstanding sprinting speed for 3 full furlongs. In the Queen Anne, the pitiless clock only endorses the eye's incredulous testimony. So now let's talk about the QIPCO Sussex Stakes, which features the matchless talent of Frankel. And Eddie, it was 12 months ago in this race, by defeating Canford Cliffs, that he demonstrated the substance of his talent, not just that precocious brilliance that we saw in the QIPCO 2000 Guineas.
It was his first run against the older horses, and Canford Cliffs had won the race the year before, but he put him firmly in his place. He sprinted away to win by 5 lengths. It was the first time we really felt that we were in the presence of a horse who would become one of the greats.
So the question is, for all the horses coming up against him, Steve, is there a way to beat him?
He'll have to underperform, Lydia. I mean, it's like everything else, whether it be human athletes or equine athletes. Every horse, every person can get beat. You know, Usain Bolt gets beat. But if he runs to his best, he won't get beat. It's as simple as that.
Do you think there's a tactics angle, Eddie?
I don't. I think those have been explored by other people. I mean, Aidan O'Brien's tried it with Acceleration. Other people have tried to put in spoilers in terms of pacemakers, and it just hasn't worked. And in fact, last year in the race, they didn't run Bullet Train, the pacemaker who has accompanied Frankel on several of his excursions. They probably didn't need to. It's difficult to see how he can be beaten, as Steve says, if everything is right with the horse himself.
And this partnership between Bullet Train and his half-brother Frankel just works like a well-oiled machine these days. It's not just on the racecourse, it's at home as well.
Yeah, he's the sacrificial lamb, and I am convinced he hates his brother. It's the Cain and Abel of horse racing, I think. It's, you know, every morning he leads him in a gallop, every morning he gets beat in a gallop, then they go to a racecourse and every time Frankel goes by him, it's even worse if it's your younger brother as well. It must be, you know, he must be having psychiatric help to get him through it. But,
Sounds like you're speaking with feeling.
no, I'm the youngest actually. I think all my brothers hate me, so I think we're fine with that. Although I haven't got any talent, so they're probably safe. But I think he's probably been a great asset to him. I really do, because we keep talking about how Frankel has not been straightforward in terms of from the beginning. He was a bundle of energy, he wanted to get on with it. And I think obviously what they've done at home with Bullet Train leading him and leading him in a lot of his races has helped to bring Frankel to the Frankel we now know and love.
The Sussex Stakes has been transformed from a procession back into a horse race by the decision of Sheikh Mohammed to supplement Farhh. Let's hear now from the racing manager, Simon Crisford, about the Godolphin hopeful.
The timing of the race, first and foremost, fits into his programme really well. Just 3 weeks and a few days after his great run at Sandown, we felt at Sandown that he didn't really quite get the trip. I know it's a stiff finish at Sandown, and he's come from a little bit out of his ground, and he's used a lot of energy up to get there to challenge Nathaniel, but he didn't finish the race as strongly as we had hoped he could do. So the timing of the race is good. Obviously Frankel's not good, but having said that, you know, we're keen to give it a go. The only time when Farhh would have raced against Frankel was at Doncaster as a 2-year-old, when he reared up and couldn't take part. And at the time I remember being really disappointed that he wasn't in the race as the early part of that conditions race unfolded. But by the end of the race, my view was perhaps we sort of dodged a bullet there. But having said that, Farhh got quite badly injured in the gates that day, and it curtailed his 3-year-old campaign a lot. And he has to have a lot of gate schooling, because ever since that occasion he's been quite concerned about the gates. So, you know, that's still in the back of our minds, and he still gets a lot of gate schooling on a daily basis. But he's been perfect since his run at Royal Ascot. But that's not to say that anything could spark him off, so we have to be careful with him. He's so lightly raced because of the problems we've had with him, that it's taken this long to get him to where he is, which is a regret.
And any conditions that would worry you about Farhh?
Well, yes, if it was too firm because of the issues we've had with him, we would have to reconsider our position. But the clerk of the course does such a great job at Goodwood, so that I think we'd all be quite confident that it'll be perfect racing ground.
So Eddie, the Eclipse and the Prince of Wales's runs when he was up to Group 1 company were both over 10 furlongs. He now drops back to a mile. Is he equally effective, more effective at 1?
Well, he was electrifying in the first cup over a mile first time out, and he won by 6 lengths. Now people would say that was only a handicap, but he's shown since then in 2 Group 1 races how effective he can be, albeit over a longer trip. He
was unfortunate at Royal Ascot, and then he ran a cracker to be second in the Eclipse. You know, he is a genuine top-class horse. So he poses the threat of any top-class horse, but the trouble is he meets a horse who is above top class. That's the point, and who has dealt with other top-class horses with ease. And I suspect Farhh will go the same way, but it's great for the race that he's running, because he is a genuinely good opponent.
Strong Suit is on a massive recovery mission, Eddie. He's been thumped on both of his starts so far this year.
Yeah, and he's never really convinced as a miler. 7 furlongs is his winning distance, certainly since he was a 2-year-old. And I don't think that he's got the stamina for a mile, certainly not against a horse like Frankel.
It's a stiffer mile at Ascot. It was heavy ground in the July Cup. Can you come up with excuses for Strong Suit, or has he, for some reason, lost the ability that he showed last year?
Well, the pluses are that he acts on the track. He won the Lennox last year, but I thought he showed, me at least, I'd rather have a sustained period of him sprinting than I would over a mile. I don't think he'll make it to the top as a miler. Stamina is his Achilles heel.
Gabriel is a 3-year-old, Eddie, who's progressing all the time. They took a punt, they supplemented him with the St James's Palace Stakes, and I think he rewarded them with a really good 5th.
Yeah, he stepped forward from his effort at Haydock the time before, and he looks progressive, but he's got to make a whole new leap forward in this race.
I'm out of credible opposition, I'm out of jokes. Frankel wins.
Yes, there's only one winner of the QIPCO Sussex Stakes, Frankel.
Frankel again, and easily.
The Artemis Goodwood Cup is always a fascinating contest, and might Godolphin be able to have a 1-2 as they did in the Ascot Gold Cup and also in the Goodwood Cup last year? This time around they have got Lost in the Moment, last year's runner-up, and ColourVision, who took the crown at Ascot. Let's hear from racing manager Simon Crisford.
But ColourVision has taken the race very well. He's in good form. Obviously it's a tough one because you know, he's going to be running against horses that he didn't beat very far, giving weight to them. So it's not going to be a straightforward race for him to win, but he's in good form and he's established himself as a top flight stayer. I think the undulations of the track won't be a problem. If he gets quicker ground than he got at Ascot, I'm sure that would help, because that will enable him to demonstrate a good turn of foot, which we know he's got.
And Lost in the Moment obviously ran very well in the race last year, if I remember rightly, and certainly acts at the track, doesn't he?
Yes, and he was slightly unlucky in running last year. He finished a very fast finishing second to opinion poll. But I think the trick with him is you've got to drop him out and just let him come through tired horses at the finish, and then that enables him to finish his race with a lot of confidence.
Eddie, Steve and I are going to talk about this third race in the series for the long distance performers. So it's the least developed of all the different divisions, but in ColourVision, winner of the Ascot Gold Cup, we might have found a contender, Eddie, that's going to stay at the top of the tree.
He seems to have improved a lot since last year when he was third in the long distance QIPCO race at the Champions Day meeting at Ascot. And that Ascot performance in the Gold Cup was his best yet. A really gutsy effort, but he was tactically perfectly positioned by Frankie Dettori throughout.
Does the fact that ColourVision has to carry a Group 1 penalty for his Ascot Gold Cup win worry you in the Group 2 Goodwood Cup? Is he significantly better than those horses he beat at Ascot?
It does worry me, and it means he has to be significantly better. I think penalties are often underestimated by people, and it may be that he is. He's progressive, he's improving, and maybe he was disadvantaged by the slow pace at Ascot, we don't know. But you shouldn't underestimate the task. He's got to beat horses who weren't far behind him, and he's got to give them weight this time.
Lost in the Moment represents Godolphin. Steve, this horse was second to opinion poll in the Goodwood Cup last year. That's probably one of his career best performances. He clearly likes the place.
He does. I think Simon summed it up right. I think he's a horse who, finding a little bit of trouble, almost suits him. I think he's a horse who, he could win one of these when everything lands right for him. You know, when things happen up front and he gets there late. He's probably not quite good enough, but he certainly acts at the course.
He was sixth in the Melbourne Cup. Really terrific performance, probably one of his best, because that's a fiendishly competitive race. He's versatile, he likes the track. I'm a bit with Steve and Simon on this one. I think he's just going to come up short again, but you know, he's only got a head to find on last year's form, because opinion poll was second in the Gold Cup.
Sadler's Rock was well positioned in the Ascot Gold Cup. He finished third, but Eddie, I feel he was really disadvantaged by how steadily the race was run.
Yeah, that meant he pulled hard early, and that probably meant he didn't have a lot left for the finish, but he did keep on strongly. I don't think the short straight at Ascot suits him as well as courses with longer straights, such as Doncaster, where he hammered opinion poll in the Doncaster Cup last year. And for all its undulations and its idiosyncrasies, Goodwood has a long finishing straight of 5 furlongs from the home turn. And that'll give Sadler's Rock a chance to get rolling. He could be a big player.
I'm convinced we didn't see the best of him at Ascot. I think it's quite easy to explain why. He had a rushed, interrupted preparation. He missed his race. They wanted to run him in, and they eventually ran him not that long before Ascot to get a race into him. I think the ground was definitely against him. His best form is on a sound surface, and it went on the soft side that day, and the slow pace will be against a thorough stayer. Now, I think he'll need a test at 2 miles. We are dropping in distance, but in a sense, I think what he wants is a gallop. I think 2 miles is fine if they go a decent gallop. He would be vulnerable in a slowly run race.
One of the absolute stars of what was a superb Royal Ascot was Simenon. He won not just once, but twice. Let's hear from his trainer, Willie Mullins.
He didn't go to Cheltenham very well. I thought he would run very well in the Supreme Novice Hurdle. He finished last. So obviously he travelled bad or something happened to him. So we took a lot more care bringing him to Ascot. And it worked, I think. So, you know, now we know the horse a lot better. And I think that'll be a big help to us coming back to Goodwood.
According to the official handicap, he's got about £10-ish to find with the Gold Cup form. Do you think that's a genuine disparity? Does that seem about right to you, or do you think he's a bit closer to them?
It's probably right, yes. His first run for us, he was very keen, and he has been that way. I think jumping has probably helped him to settle, which has improved his flat racing.
He ran at Goodwood a couple of times and seemed to run pretty well. Is that fair?
The track should be okay. I think it's a replica of my Gallop, actually.
Oh, is it really? Is that right?
Well, it's not unlike it, especially for the Goodwood Cup. We start off on a bend, go left, out, turn back right, up the straight. Anyone that's been to my Gallop would know it's quite a similar. If it was a round gallop, we would go past the stands and into a circuit and back down to and back down the straight again.
So basically the race has been set up for you, is what you're saying?
I think so. I think this track was made for us.
What a horse Simenon is. He's developed into a high-class hurdler, and then he came to Royal Ascot and won not just the Ascot Stakes as a handicap, but the longest race in Britain on the flat, the Queen Alexandra over 2 mile and 6 furlong.
Proved he was tough, didn't he? He won both by long margins, putting a lot of distance between him and his rivals in a very short space of time. He's got a turn of foot. I think that's really going to make a difference. And he's going forward fast. I like the way Ryan Moore, his jockey, suggested to Mullins, his trainer, that they come to this step up in class. The second horse in the Queen Alexandra has run really well in a Group 3 in France since. The third horse has won a big handicap at Ascot since. The form's stacking up really well. He's a horse with a lot of pace for a stayer. I think he'll win.
I'm going to go for ColourVision. I know he was well positioned to win the Ascot Gold Cup, but I suspect he might have won it anyway. I think he could well be the best horse in this division.
A horse who was impressive not once but twice at Ascot. Simenon showed blinding speed for a stayer. I think he'll win.
I'm keen on the chance of Sadler's Rock. I think the ground was against him and his preparation was against him. No excuses this time. I think he'll prove the best of the stayers.
So now let's talk about the Markel Insurance Nassau Stakes, which is part of the Fillies and Mares division of the QIPCO British Champions Series. There is a trainer with a strong hand here, and he's John Gosden.
Izzi Top's been a real success story this year.
Yeah, she's a talented filly, always has been. And she won listed race in the spring at Newbury, and then we went to the Oak. She didn't stay. She got third, but she didn't get the trip. And not a surprise if you look at her pedigree. And then she came out of the race with a problem. We got that sorted. She had one more run at St. Cloud in the autumn, and she won a Group 3. And then the owners of Gamely kept her in training, and she's won a Dahlia, a Middleton, and now a Pretty Polly. So she's a very progressive filly. She's in good terms with herself. A mile and a quarter's her trip. She enjoys some give in the ground, so obviously we'll see what's happening with the weather.
Does the fact that she ran so well at Epsom before not staying give you confidence that she'll be fully as easy at Goodwood?
Yes, I think so. I mean, she handled a downhill section. Didn't love it, but she handled it. So you're quite right to point it out. Off the top of the hill on the upper track, the mile and a quarter, that's quite a little run downhill. But no, I think if she has her ground, that'll suit her. We have the Fugue in the same race. And she's never had her ground since the Musadora. She had it at Epsom, but she got sort of cleaned out early. And then the Ribblesdale, she ran well, but it wasn't her ground. So she's just a filly who wants top of the ground. So if we get top of the ground, it would very much favour the Fugue, yeah.
And could a mile and a quarter be an absolute option? She's clearly stayed a mile and a half well, don't get me wrong, but do you think she could be every bit as effective at mile and a quarter?
Yeah, I do, because she has a very high cruising speed and a great turn of foot.
Izzi Top finally got her Group 1 stripes last time in the Irish Pretty Polly, Eddie. I was really pleased for her, and she handled quite testing conditions.
She did, and I think the trainer, as he said, feels that she's better in soft conditions. She may or may not get them at Goodwood, but she has got some form on fast ground as well as a 3-year-old. She's very consistent too, and very tough. We saw that we've seen that in all her races this season. Her Middleton win was another striking effort. So she's going to be a big player.
Now, a filly who had no luck at all at Epsom this time around, Steve, was the Fugue, who suffered some ill luck in running before finishing fast.
Yeah, she acquitted herself really well. She was arguably the best filly on the day, but certainly one of the best, whatever. The other thing I think about her, although she undoubtedly stays a mile and a half, you can't run like she did in the Oaks and not stay, I think she'll be fully effective. She won a Musadora, but she'll be fully effective at 10 furlongs.
She showed a brilliant turn of foot at York, and that was rather blunted by Epsom, by being shuffled back early in the race. Ground comes up fast here at Goodwood on the Saturday. I think that brilliance will be back.
There is no doubt, really, which filly, Eddie, has the best form in this race, and that's No Fairy.
Yeah, 5 times a Group 1 winner, globe-trotting as well. That's not easy. She's won right the other side of the globe in Hong Kong and Japan, and she won the Oaks, of course, first time attempting a 1.5 miles, but she's equally effective over a 1.25 miles. She was second in the race last year. She's had setbacks since her last run. That won't make things easy for her, but she's hardened, tough, and she goes on the ground.
Now, Rain has already won a Group 1, that was the Prix de l'Opera last season, Steve, and then went close in the Breeders' Cup as well. What do you make of her run at Royal Ascot?
It was below par. It wasn't up to the 2 performances you mentioned, but it was the first run of the season, over a trip which I think is on the sharp side, a mile, and she had a penalty, a Group 1 penalty. So all things being equal, to make your seasonal reappearance at Royal Ascot quite a tough ask, and she didn't run to her best, but it wasn't an absolutely woeful run, and I suspect we'll see a much, much better Nara Rain in the Nassau, especially as a 1.25 miles I think is more a trip.
Timepiece is trained by Sir Henry Cecil. She's got her Group 1, Eddie, but I felt she rather nicked last year's Falmouth, and she really hasn't been in good form so far this year.
No, you couldn't exactly set your clock by her, could you, Lydia? She does have blips in her career, but she's done this before. She's bounced back from poor runs, but she's one of those fly-by-night fillies who a little bit on the day with her.
Reportedly, she's been pleasing in work for the first time this season. I guess that's a positive, but I'm not even sure at her absolute peak she's as good as 1 or 2 horses in this race.
Sea of Heartbreak just improved all the time as a 4-year-old last year. Eddie, is 10 furlongs her trip?
Yeah, I think so. She's a horse who bounces off the fast ground, and if she gets that, she will have a chance. She was 5th in the EP Taylor, which is one of the top fillies and mares races worldwide, a very valuable race over 10 furlongs out in Canada. That shows she's capable of making a splash at this level. Not a forlorn hope, but then I've got a soft spot for her.
Well, I like her too. She's got a turn of foot,
Yeah.
and if it turns out to be a tactical race, she could be quite potent, I think.
She can. She's got speed, and the stable's been in really good form this season. I know she hasn't, but there's still room for her to come back.
Well, it's a race for fillies and mares in the QIPCO British Champions Series, so I think we're almost contractually obliged, Steve, to talk about maybe.
The difference is it's 10 furlongs this time, Lydia. It is quite possible that the 1,000 guineas, the race came too soon for her, over a mile. It is conceivable that she didn't stay the 1.5 miles of the Oaks, and I'm definitely prepared to believe that the soft ground was against her in the Falmouth. So maybe 10 furlongs on decent ground is exactly what she wants.
Maybe, Eddie, maybe isn't good enough.
Maybe, Lydia. Her homework has always been brilliant, apparently, and she hasn't really translated it onto a racecourse since her 2-year-old days. Maybe she's just never going to reach those heights again.
She is, to me, I think, beginning to look like a 2-year-old who is progressive, and it just hasn't really clicked as a 3-year-old. But I do think it's conceivable, did you use conceivable, that 10 furlongs is going to be her trip.
And in none of those races has she run badly.
No, true.
There's not been one bad run. I'm loath to completely write her off.
And it's quite traditional, Steve, seeing as we're talking about fillies and mares, that you should quite fancy late-time.
I do think the 10 furlongs will really, really suit her. Whether she's a Group 1 filly, I mean, her form says she's not. I think she's better than she's shown this year. And I really would run out of excuses if 10 furlongs and decent ground doesn't see her in a better light.
I'm not sure you'd quite run out of excuses. I don't think she quite handled Epsom, did she?
I hadn't thought about that. Oof, Yorkshire Oaks, here we come.
I'm going to go for Narain. I think there were excuses, reasons for her run last time, and back up to a proper trip of 10 furlongs. I think she can prove once again she's a Group 1 filly.
A filly who's had valid excuses for both her last 2 runs, the Fugue.
I have a feeling that a 1.25 miles on decent ground is exactly what the Fugue wants, and I think she'll get it.
We hope you've been inspired by the Armchair Jockeys on this week's BCS TV and are looking forward to a glorious Goodwood more than worthy of the name. We're heading next to the north of England and 4 more QIPCO British Champions Series races at beautiful York's excellent Ebor Festival, where we could see Frankel stepping up to 10 furlongs for the very first time. Also at York, having been replaced by a younger version in Chris Dixon last time and a taller version in Eddie Fremantle this time around, we'll all have to make do with Rishi Prasad. We'll see you then. Goodbye.